Irashaimase. Hello and welcome to Fitaurus Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fitaurus. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this Saturday we have Life Force, the 1986 classic spin-off of Gradius. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. Released in 1986, Life Force, or as it was known in Japan, Salamander, is a wonderful title that's seen almost a dozen ports over the years to all these different consoles. So today we're looking at the hamster release of the Arcade Archive version of Life Force, and this is one that I have to say I really like. Here we are at the main Arcade Archive menu, and we can see part of what makes this a really great Life Force or Salamander collection. So it's got 3 different ROMs on it. The original Japanese release, Salamander, the North American release, Life Force, and then the Japanese version of Life Force, which took the North American release of Salamander and added even more to it, making it a really unique and interesting experience. And all 3 of these are different and unique enough in their own ways that it's great to have them on a collection. The collection is available on the Nintendo Switch and the PlayStation 4. The PlayStation 4 version came out in 2016, the Switch in 2020. You can get both Salamander and Life Force on the recently released Arcade Classics Anniversary Collection, but not the Japanese version of Life Force, so that's something to keep in mind. Today we'll be focusing primarily on the North American release of Life Force. Starting up the game, we take off as the Vic Viper. It is possible to play this game 2 players simultaneous, and the second player controls the Red Fighter, the Lord British. So right off the bat you can see some differences that this title has to standard Gradius titles. So rather than the power-up bar and the power-ups that you pick up to move along that bar, Salamander and its sequel Salamander 2, or rather Life Force in this case, uses a simplified power-up system where the power-ups give you certain items rather than just move you along a power-up bar. There are 6 total power-ups that we can pick up. The ever-useful multiples. There's also missiles, or as they're called in Life Force, destruct missiles. We have speed up, or hyperspeed. There's the laser, the ripple laser, and the shield. So there's definitely pros and cons to having the power-ups be in this way, but in a lot of ways I happen to prefer it, at least for this title. And that's partially due to how much I get annoyed by the whole power down syndrome that Gradius games fall victim to, where when you lose your life and you start the game at like base power, it's really frustrating to build back up. So interestingly enough, in the Japanese version of Life Force, and this is one of the things that makes it different and unique, they actually introduced the power-up system back into the Salamander Life Force series. So in that one, we collect power-ups in the standard Gradius style, and then choose our upgrades from the power bar. So here we find ourselves at the end of stage 1 after fighting our way through some missiles. Not missiles, muscles. The iconic brain boss of Life Force with these graspy arms. Ever so slowly coming out, reaching out to pull us to our doom. So this boss isn't too much of a challenge. We just circle around him, move around to the front, and bam. And then we go and see another really neat feature of Life Force. The game isn't just a horizontal scroller, it's both a horizontal and a vertical scroller. So the stages alternate horizontal, vertical, horizontal, vertical. In the Japanese version it says go up, go left. But the Japanese version and the American version, one of the things that's different is kidney stones cannot be destroyed. There's a difference in story. So in Salamander, you're trying to defeat the Salamander forces that have taken over a living world. But in the case of Life Force, and by extension, the Japanese version of Life Force, we're actually inside this organism, Sentinel XR1. And that has been invaded by this like radiation, so it's kind of like viewing it more as a tumor, and we're going into the Sentinel to destroy said tumor. So we've got some decent power-ups going here. So in the Japanese version of Life Force, this stage in particular takes on a really different look to it. The enemies have a more biological appearance to them. Those stones, rather than just being rocks or asteroids, have a very more organic look to them, and especially this boss looks way, way more organic. I can appreciate a lot of those differences that they added into the game to kind of go with that whole Life Force inside giant organism feel, and I really feel that it works quite well. Boss 2 down, we move on to the third stage. So some of these stages, like the stage we just finished and this stage, actually have a star background in the original Salamander. Do I want speed? Yeah, we'll take a speed up. So in the Japanese version of Life Force, this is referred to as like stomach acid. Well, in Life Force as well, it's referred to as stomach acid. But it's got a blue color, and instead of these fireballs, it's a far more organic amoeboids that are attacking us. And that's just a really nice touch. So, just talking a little bit about the emulation of this one, I feel like this is a really great emulated version. There are some enhancements and some options to help the sound be like the original, as well as make the game a little bit smoother. So you do gain some benefits of having the game be closer to its original arcade version, but you also get a couple extra features and options that basically make the game run just a little bit smoother. There is still some slowdown, as there is a lot going on in the title itself. Keep that in mind. And there we have it. Life Force Arcade Archive version served up for your enjoyment. So this is a title that, especially if you're a fan of the Gradius franchise or Salamander, this is one that's worth picking up. Although these days it is possible to play Life Force Salamander on just about any of the modern platforms, thanks to the Arcade Classics Anniversary Collection. But I feel like this one is definitely a nice package put together by Hamster. The minus flavors, just the usual problem I have with the whole like power down issue. Less so in Life Force and Salamander, more so in Life Force Japanese version, where once you're powered down, it's very hard to recover from that. And then there is a lack of continues. You can turn on some options to allow you to buy more lives with credits up to a certain limit, making things easier, but really, especially without continues, at least playing single player, there is options for some continues when you're playing like two-player simultaneous. This can be a very brutal game. But as far as the plus flavors are concerned, I really do like the power-up system that is present in the Salamander titles. And also just having the wonderful variety that comes in this collection is like really great to have. I love seeing all the different ROMs and just how they're in some cases subtly different, or like majorly different from one version to the other. Alright, that'll just about wrap it up for this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. As always, I want to thank you so much for coming out and joining me this week, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.